First of all, I hope all of you and your families are keeping safe in these uncertain times. And I think the last 2 years has really changed our perspectives on how we live our lives and how we even do our jobs. And kudos to the IT community and CIOs and leaders like you who have held fort and ensured your organizations get the necessary support, both from a technology and feet on street and the need to respond to the business. So congratulations to all of you. So also thanks once again for being here on a Friday evening. The fact that you're making time for a data center conversation on a Friday evening goes to show how important this topic is for you. But the fact that this is a Friday evening, we wanted to sort of keep it a little more casual, a little more informal, and definitely not a death by PPT. So what I would encourage you to do is that as we sort of go through the course of this discussion in the next hour or so, I encourage you to sort of type in your observations, questions, if you have any, or any comments that you have in the Q&A box, and the moderators of the session will ensure that those questions are asked to the relevant people. Or let's say if you have any key observations, do sort of try and engage with some of the great leaders that we have today on this call. So thank you once again. So we will sort of kick this off by a fireside chat, and I was hoping Zoom would have a background for a fireside chat, but nonetheless, when Airtel Nextra reached out to me for sort of organizing this panel discussion and for this evening, I said, look, one of the things that we need to talk about is the fact that, look, there is a huge whitewashing and brainwashing happening in the market today, that the future is everything about cloud. I know literally every vendor that I engage with and speak to is sort of selling this Kool-Aid these days, that, public cloud is the future and how organizations sort of must lift and shift their workloads onto the public cloud. Now, but I think that's far from the contrary. In fact, in the last quarter, we at Greyhound Research alone have received over 30 CIO inquiries from across the globe on cloud repatriation, wherein these are large organizations, these are large global organizations, and even some Indian organizations who are now actually looking to move their workloads back onto a private cloud or to a co-location environment, simply on account of either very high pricing for public cloud, or let's say compliance issues or complexity, or just plain performance issues as well. So, there is a entire move for repatriation. Nonetheless, what I'm going to also do in the next about 30 minutes is sort of also walk you through some of my observations that we have as an analyst firm. Just for context, we do about 10,000 CIO inquiries on an annualized basis. And what our experience has taught us in this entire infrastructure business is that any enterprise-grade workload today is not necessarily only going to be on cloud, but more importantly, is going to be on a geo-distributed architecture that essentially allows organizations to build for current and futuristic workloads. Now, be that let's say, a mobile application, or let's say a chatbot, or even metaverse in the coming times, where virtual reality is going to be a huge thing. Now, I know a lot of you may think metaverse is just probably a marketing thing, and sure, and rightfully so. But the fact is that a lot of these infrastructure investments that you're going to make today are going to allow you to be able to sort of make these tests and trials for new applications and new distributed applications that your business wants to provision in the near future. So to talk about that, I'd love to call upon Mr. John Burgess. He's the head of IT and digital banking for Dhanlaxmi Bank. John, thank you for joining me for this discussion. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Sanjit. Thank you, Sanjit.
So, thank you. So I'm going to pick your brains. And the reason I chose you especially for this discussion is because I know you're coming hot on the back of a large transformation exercise. I thought you know better than you to talk about what actually went through this transformation exercise. But before I get to you, I'd love to tell all of you a very interesting case study, which I think will sort of set the tonality for John's and my discussion. We've just recently closed a very large advisory engagement, one of India's largest hospitality chains. Interestingly, this hospitality chain had an entire decentralized architecture all across the country, essentially an on-premise architecture across all its hotels. And then now we've sort of helped them move lock, stock, and barrel to a more distributed architecture where they have a a core data center, private cloud near the headquarters. They have a edge cloud, depending on where their customers come from. They have a bit of SaaS, which is CRM and HRMS, and of course they have an entire independent DR environment. So that's what a typical data center transformation exercise looks like today. So John, at Dhanlaxmi Bank, talk to us. Was your situation something similar when you started on this journey?
Yeah. Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. Once again, to talk about the transformation journey which we have gone through the last year, where I will just give you a background. Where I am from the banking industry, and as you said, Sajid, we are driven by compliance. Rather than we cannot take chances. Being the customer's data. And with all the guidelines from the regulators, be it RBI, be it central government, finance ministry, we are bound to, rely on that. And we will have to ensure that, we adhere to each and single direction. And there are multiple audits. In fact, I would rather say that, we are audited at least 5 or 6 times a year by different entities, be it internal auditors, whoever it is. So it's very critical for us that we do have a better technology and better infrastructure for our data center. When we started our journey, we had our co-located data center around 17 racks, which is always we can change it at our next run. We were one of our customers. We started in 2010 at Bangalore. Then we had a DR, which was a captive one, which was at my head office is at Thrissur. We had a captive one with the Thrissur database here. And we didn't have a near data center as such, as per the directions of the regulators. So when we took up, we said, we will, I always, after taking charge, I always looked at what would be the total cost of ownership and the cost to serve ratio, which is very important for us to understand, what would be the amount which we spend and what is the benefit we get out of having our own data center. And we calculated, and I and my team found that we were able to convince our board that it is better to collocate DR to a different place where, as you said, geo-distributed data center, because our DR is now at Hyderabad, different player, not extra. Then we have a near data center, which is also in Bangalore. So we took this journey, and we are very satisfied. In fact, I would rather say that as I said, the compliance-related points in the data center, especially in the physical infrastructure and the availability point of view, from a electricity point of view, from the other network point of view, are very, very, very less. So that's where we are. That's a journey which we have embarked, and we have now 3 geographically distributed data centers, as we call it, in different places.
Wonderful. So we'll come back to the architecture, but I love what the points you just made. Thank you, John. Now, let's take a step back. Let's say, and let's sort of simplify this for everybody on the call, because not everybody is audited 6 times per annum. That's a crazy number to even have as a team. But let's take a step back and understand, when you as an organization, when you were embarking on this journey of transformation, what were some of the considerations at this stage? And I'll give you an example. Did you, let's say, look at forecasting usage patterns? Or let's say, did you actually do a handshake between the business and sort of sat them down and said, look, let's talk beyond compliance. Let's talk, let's say, for example, how will our sales teams look like 5 years down the line? What sort of numbers are we looking at? So sort of talk me through the planning exercise. How did you sort of reach there? What were the considerations? Who was involved? And what value did they add to the team?
Yes, Ajit. See, what we typically, if you look at, the life cycle of any hardware or solutions which you buy in a bank, is normally we look at 5 years. So, that's normally the capacity planning which we do. Here also we did the exact thing, extrapolating the growth and the business inputs on what is the business budget and how do we grow for next 5 years. And then the infra was designed to ensure that at least 5 to 6 years there will not be any issue. And one of the key things I would say that I would rather say that it's not the capacity alone which matters. It's on the tack on certain certain activities. I would rather say that EOD, I mean, end of the day, which is typically what we do in a core banking. I mean, earlier it was taking, close to 5 to 6 hours. I mean, now it has come down less than 2 hours. I mean, that's the planning which we have done. I mean, this was one of the points which we kept very, very, very inclusive in our design. That it should be less than 2 hours. I mean, we are we aim for actually 1 hour. I mean, but it's very difficult to achieve. But and we are using Oracle. I mean, Oracle has FlexCube. Oracle has even published in their journal. I mean, this is the best EOD time. I mean, the lowest EOD time in any of the banks. So that's what we have been looking at, and other factors, of course, is the availability. As I said, I mean, as Senthil was mentioning about confidentiality, integrity, and availability. All these CAA points were also considered for the while we shortlisted our data centers. Yeah.
Interesting. And let's say when you were shortlisting, because you sort of mentioned shortlisting. Now, when you were shortlisting these data center partners, or let's say these OEM providers, I'm sure you went through this entire exercise of hyperconverged infrastructure versus 3-tier, all of those exercises that typically anybody would go through, right? Now, if you were to sort of, let's say, share with everybody, what were some of your expectations from your partners, and what were you sort of really expecting? Were you expecting these partners to be AI first, or let's say, did you expect them to be first? Get the basics right. I mean, don't sell me nonsense in future. So sort of sell me the bare metal today, and we'll see how that goes. What were your expectations, John?
Yeah. See, before going into your specific question, and one of the things is, the entire transformation journey, it was not only data center, it was some of the applications upgrade, including core banking. This was done during the year when we were struck with COVID. I mean, in fact, I would say that, none of the vendors were traveling at that point. Complete support was on the go. And thanks to my team, I mean, we have a very strong team. And so what we were looking at, it is not, the AI thing, or, whatever be the latest technology, which was, or jargons. I mean, rather I would say I was looking at the availability of the support. I mean, see, we have been in the business for quite some time. And, we discussed with our peers also. Now, of course, banking being very close, we can discuss with the peers. So it's on the cutting edge technology, of course, number one. And number two is on the support which they give, and it's based on actually the historical, data on how they were supporting us, and it's very important. I mean, I have told you, it was very difficult to get support at that point of time, but I can tell you that partners have also done something magnificently during our project, that they were available 24/7. Of course, communications gaps would be there than an on-site and an off-site support. Barring that, I can tell you that the partners, whoever it is, has given us support. I mean, I think the support. I mean, if you evaluate any of the solution, I can tell you, and if you have a technical evaluation, and all the vendors, or rather the partners, will have almost one of these similar the solutions. You take hardware, IBM will work, Oracle will work, but look at how they come out of the very difficult times is what we'll have to look at, and how the support they are giving is what we'll have to look at.
Excellent, thank you. So let's in the interest of time, let's move on very quickly, and so let's go a little deeper into the architecture. So you said you had a 3-point architecture: the core DC, the near DC, and the edge locations. Wonderful, but talk to us about how you decided. How did you ensure, or how did you actually decide which workload which will be attributed to what sort of data center environment? What was that decision making like?
Okay, and being in a bank, I can tell you that it's very. It's almost straightforward. How do we do is we have close to around 180 applications running in the bank. And we have categorized around 18 applications which are very critical. If you look at critical, how do we, it's from a business perspective, like core banking is a critical application. Look at digital channels, it's critical. So all the applications need to be there in the data center. There is no way out. That should be there. And for the critical applications, there should be a 1:1. I would rather say 1:1 is, when you switch off, the other one, after switching on, or maybe you roll onto the DR, it should work. So 1:1 capability for the critical application should be there in the DR. Then the near data center, what we are looking at is actually we are having a Oracle, database ADG technology we are using for replicating the critical databases. That is how most of the banks do. So it was a straightforward for us, but the thumb rule is all the applications, the data center critical 1:1. The other one may not be 1:1, maybe 1:2, and the databases replication at the near data center is what we have done, and that is how normal.
Perfect. Thank you. Now, talking about the incident response and automation, because one of the fundamental changes that comes through when you change this architecture is how you sort of manage and respond to incidents. And the fact is that ransomware is in a high all year long, and we've seen a lot of statistics come out, even from the US and the others, how ransomware attacks have quadrupled over the last year, especially during COVID times. So if you could sort of give me a sense of how did you bake in incident response and cybersecurity as part of the architecture, I would love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Yes. Cybersecurity also, again, for banks, it's very easy to have a framework because RBI has already issued a cybersecurity framework for the banks way back in 2016. So all the incident response, as you will agree that, the SOC is one of the key factors in a manage, in a bank. So the SOC would be the first, the place where you can get the incidents. And there are already laid-in processes for handling that, and that's how we were doing. I think somebody's asking questions. Should we answer right now, or maybe
in the end? Why don't you just sort of go on? We'll take it in the end, please.
Thank you. Yeah.
So okay, good. Now you mentioned capacity, and I'd love to sort of come back to that capacity question because what I see very often is capacity is done once in a year, once in 5 years. But the fact is, it's a never-ending capacity planning situation today where we are, because especially in COVID, that we saw that people were launching bots in the shop from home, banking at home bots were coming in, and even banks were launching new applications even for their employees on iPads, etc. Now, in a situation like this, where capacity planning is virtually never ending, how does your team keep on top of it? Because it is virtually a quarterly, 6-month, year, and annual exercise now.
Right. See, if you look at the COVID situation, I'm sure that not only banks, all the organization would have undergone this, of getting the new infrastructure for deploying the new application, which the business thought is right. I mean, which we are doing. See, you set apart that. The capacity planning, which I was talking about, is based on the business budgets or business, the volumes or the business forecasting. I would rather say that. It is based on that. But at the same time, your infrastructure should have a capability of, plugging in the more. COVID has taught us a lesson that anything can happen at any point of time. So when you do that, maybe if somebody does it, this year, and I'm sure that you will consider all these aspects. So, so when something comes, abnormal like COVID has done, I'm sure that all the CIOs, not only bank CIOs, everybody has handled it in a way or other. Some of the applications on cloud, some of the applications on their own data center they have one, and that is how we manage. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Now, we sort of get to the questions in about a couple of minutes, but before we get there, I think one of the biggest issues, or let's say the critical success factors in a geo-distributed architecture or data center, is the underlying network capacity and the throughput that sort of comes through, right? And the fact is, be it in a bank or let's say any other environment, you just cannot rely on traffic from one sort of network type. There's always going to be MPLS, there's going to be normal ISP broadband, there's going to be dedicated ISPs, a mix of all of that, right? Now, can you talk to us about what's that setup at your end right now from a network perspective?
Yeah, from it. Network is a very key factor, as you said. Any of the environment where, especially geo-distributed data centers, because you need to have a real-time replication or transaction happening from two different data centers. So it's very critical. So what we have is, nobody can rely on a single type. you should have an heterogeneous network is what, I believe, and that is how things should be. I mean, if you look at, even ISPs, at some point of time, earlier we were having two ISPs for the same location. Now, in fact, we have gone ahead with a Wi-Fi also, so that, if there is a worker, it takes care of the critical location. Yes, that's how it is. So it's always an heterogeneous setup, which, we do. And QoS, we have enabled QoS for the application, some of the applications, because it all depends on organizations, priority for application. QoS is enabled. That's how we have
let me come back to you on QoS. Let me pick your brains again. Look, you're based in Chennai, a very important location because the submarine cables land there, right? Bombay and Chennai, that's where the biggest data center hubs today. Now, for you as a bank, how important was it to sort of have a partner, or let's say have a company that has its own landing point from a submarine cable standpoint? Because ultimately, the hardening of the 5 nines tend to ensure that the core DC can actually give you 5 nines. Having a cable is one of the most critical underpins, right? So how is that important in your decision making, please?
Yeah, it is. It's also very important. We have ISPs who are giving us connectivity. So who are the ISPs which are available. I'm sure that almost everyone will have the connectivity from them. So one of the key factors is whether they have the capability to give, or they have a landing station at their point of the DR or DC, wherever we are located. To have the capability to give the connectivity to us. So that was also considered, and that was an important point. We have a metrics for evaluation of the data center. This is one of the key points. There are multiple, actually, like, Nextra gives power from 2 grids, then plus generator, and our DR, they give solar plus. That was a consideration. So all this, are taken into consideration. So, there are multiple factors which we as we discuss, architecture is one, then the availability, then the physical security, the location is very important. Somebody has asked a question, DR should not be in a different zone. Yes, it should be in a different zone. That should also be considered. All this has to be considered along with that, network capability, their capability to give the network connectivity. Sometimes, it may not happen. All these factors have to be considered. So I would rather suggest that, there should be a metrics which, we should be evaluating, based on our priorities and, best practices which is available in the industry as such.
Perfect. We'll get to the question on DR, and I'd love for you to sort of, double click on DR for Anandi, because they've asked a very good question on DR. But you spoke of QoS, and whenever somebody speaks of QoS, my antennas rise very, very quickly, because QoS is that black box that essentially either gives you the great brownie points with your board, or essentially means you've done nothing. So talk to us some of the QoS parameters that are important to you, please.
From an application perspective, I would say I will not go into the technical details. Say core banking. Banking, if you have, say, 2 Mbps line in a branch, so we will assign a minimum, whatever be the the bandwidth which is available. There are multiple applications in the branch. I will say that core banking is an important application. Then customer onboarding is an important application. So we'll prioritize these applications ahead of the other applications which are not. Say for example, intranet is not an application which is used for the customer service. It's only for internal customer or maybe for the staff. So such prioritization, it all depends. Again, metrics or others, these metrics would apply, in all these cases to arrive at, what is the best priority which you will have to. So
is it fair to assume, since you're using a variety of network types, you are also an SD-WAN user? Because you have a near DR. Can you give us a sense what's your SD-WAN looking like right now?
SD-WAN, I would rather say that SD-WAN, we are just evaluating it. We've not implemented straight away. We are just evaluating. Actually, POC is underway. So we are. Having said that, SD-WAN is another area, as you were talking about cloud. Nobody's maybe that everybody is sure about what SD-WAN is, but when we done POC, we understood that it is not easy as we think, or it does not give the result as we thought. So we're just looking at it and we are evaluating.
Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
So now, in the interest of the question that we have, and you've got 2 questions in DR, are you in a place, John, to give us some more details about DR? What does the architecture look like? How did you design it? And more importantly, the question on statutory compliance, that is DR allowed?
The architecture from a perspective of technical architecture?
Yeah.
See, the core banking is on real application cluster from Oracle, and then, there are 2 nodes under that. So that should this is what you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Then for storages and for other applications, we use VMware, and both at DC as well as at DR. So VMware for we are using that also, because for virtualization we are using that. From a perspective of the other applications, all the applications, most of the application other than core banking is through VMware.
Okay.
And our all databases are Oracle 19c.
Okay, interesting. And Guru Ranjan has a very interesting question. He says, what was the Airtel commitment on solar power? Was there any cost benefit, or is it too early to talk about that?
No. See, not Airtel. I would rather say the vendor also. I think Controllers is our vendor at Hyderabad. I mean, DR is at Hyderabad. And solar, there is a cost benefit. I can tell you that 40% benefit than the normal electricity. I mean, that's what you're looking at, right? I mean, 40%. More than 40%.
Interesting.